Welcome back. You're still watching Power Lunch Southern Africa. Africa's digital economy is growing rapidly, but there's an argument that the continent is failing to fully benefit from one of its most valuable assets, and that is data. Sam Tayengwa, Group Executive for Global Markets at Meta, estimates that Africa's data economy could eventually be worth as much as $400 billion annually, driven by mobile money, AI, digital identity systems, and consumer behavior data. As it stands, as he says, Africa is giving this wealth away to international markets. Sam is in studio, and he joins me now to discuss exactly how the continent can retain this value within African borders. Sam, thank you so much for making the time to chat to us and for coming in studio. Really appreciate it. Now, you make the argument that Africa's data is worth between 200 and 400 billion US dollars in annual terms, and the continent is not doing anything about it. If anything, we are shipping it off to international markets. I suppose the question for me is, what's the first step to not only unlock this value, but retain it in Africa?
Well, thanks, Palesa, and good afternoon to your viewers. I think it's about understanding that we are a sovereign continent, right? I'll give you an example of what we're currently witnessing as we speak. I'm not sure if you've been following the U.S. First strategy, where they've been coming into Africa looking for health data. As we stand today, U.S. I think has signed about 20 deals worth about $16 billion, targeting countries that have broken health systems. So it's a desperate measure for those countries to receive US dollars, you know, throwing the carrot and then in return extracting data that we have not been able to price. I think we've seen this with raw materials, we've seen this with agricultural produce. We are the producers of this. We ship it offshore. It is refined, processed back to us and sold expensive.
Yeah. And so what do you suggest should be the first step for governments, for policymakers, for the business community in the continent to unlock this value and keep it here?
Governance. I think we look out to governments to really put data governance structures in place, right? They need to understand that this is an asset that we cannot watch, like how we've watched other raw materials, how we've watched other assets just being taken offshore for those that understand the value. So governments need to put proper governance structures. And there are about 5 pillar structures we have already started to identify, or at least I have argued in my thought leadership. You know, the first one, which is identity infrastructures, right? If we can identify the right angles of how this data is worth in Africa, we cannot, you know, we won't be able to allow offshore countries or international countries to come and just take it from us as they wish or as they will.
But what about that data that is already being extracted and monetized offshore? Is there any way of realistically reclaiming it back home, I suppose? Well, if right now they're already taking advantage of the fact that we have not put the right governance in place. I mean, if you look at Europe with the case of Facebook, they had to put the right governance in place to challenge Facebook exploitation of citizens in Europe. So we have to do that. At this point, yes, we have missed the first window, but the argument now is how do we put the guardrails that allows us to, you know, protect this asset? And that's why I argue on governance, right? If governments are not desperate to just ship this data offshore, are not desperate to just give it away for free. I mean, we've had in Kenya, they've challenged the data, the health data, that I just spoke about earlier on. The court in Kenya have actually put a freeze on the government to say you can't just export citizen data. We need to first understand what is the value that they will give back to the community or to our people in Kenya. In Zambia have also put a stop on it, as well as in Zimbabwe. So governments have to put the right governance structures to protect this asset before it is just shipped for free. For that which has already gone out, I think we're a bit too late on that window, but we are having the conversations now to say, how do we protect this asset? All right. And I do think another important element to the discussion is infrastructure, right? Do we have the right AI infrastructure that enables Africa to compete, I suppose, as it were, at a global level?
We're starting to see countries, you know, getting better at understanding the adoption of AI. I mean, South Africa is quite advanced at that. You have countries like in West Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, they're taking advantage of new nuances in terms of technology, the use of AI, of utilizing it to understand data. And I think we can collaborate as governments on the continent to actually share best practices on how AI can be trained to value our data. You see, Western models traditionally, which are conventional, they won't be able to give the value of the African data. It's structured, it's fragmented, but AI models currently are the best tool that we can have to actually start giving the value to our data and to help us monetize our data compared to your conventional models that have already been used historically.
Yeah. And I want to go back to the point that you made about pricing data. But as it stands, do we even understand, or do governments even understand sovereign data as an asset class, first and foremost?
Good question. Probably not. Probably not. That's why you see that there hasn't been these guardrails to actually value this asset. I'll give you an example. In Brazil, the government in Brazil are currently piloting a project that allows citizens to monetize their data through a company called D-Wallet, right? It's a government that has understood the value of data. And I think we need to learn from some of these best practices and observe some of the playbooks in other regions and say, as African governments, how do we retain the value of this asset?
Sure.
How do we claim this asset that it benefits our citizens? I mean, if you think about all these social platforms that are currently available, it's just data that is just shipping offshore with zero value to the citizens here in Africa.
Realistically, if we were to talk time frame, how long would it take?
I think it starts with intention, right? It starts with intention. If we have the right intention to really, protect this asset as Africans. I'll give an example. In East Africa, I mean, I've spent a lot of time working in East Africa, Rwanda, Kenya. What you start seeing is that the region is taking ownership of more than just data, but its assets, right? They've introduced, cross-border data policies that allows a citizen from Kenya to travel to Rwanda by just using an ID card. So we're starting to see momentum in certain regions really progressing in the valuing of data on this continent. So give or take, between 5 or 10 years, we should really progress positively in this space. Yeah.
Okay. Your thought leadership piece also talks about mobile money transactions, informal trade flows, and agricultural activity as untapped alternative data. In which sectors do you see the most commercial and development breakthroughs through AI?
So I'll give an example. Right now at Metas, we are busy with a project in Tanzania where we want to actually utilize farm data to give the ability for financial institutions to understand the risk profile of a farmer. So traditionally, your conventional systems wouldn't be able to do that other than AI that can come in and understand climate data, soil data, and give a true reflection of the value or the risk of that farm as well as the farmer. So you're starting to see the value of that inner segment like agriculture. Then you go to either the SME segment, which everybody wants to tap into but don't understand how to actually solve for it because the data is fragmented, is siloed, and is not processed enough to give back the value to those that wants to utilize it to make decisions. So I like the question you asked earlier, what about AI? It is the tool that we have right now in Africa to really give value to these segments where alternative data can be seen as a true measure of risk across different segments of market.
Sure. Sam, I wish we had more time, but before I let you go, I want us to quickly talk about the National Data Trust that you propose as some kind of sovereign wealth fund for the digital age. Explain for me what that is and how would it look like in practical terms.
So I gave the example of Brazil earlier on, where in Brazil the government has actually empowered the citizens to use their data. For me, that's where it starts. I mean, if you think about minerals, right, we all claim that they are our sovereign assets, but how many minerals are benefiting people in any of our African markets? When we talk of government subsidies, when we talk of the ability to claim back the value of these assets or minerals. So if you think about data, if we can empower the citizens to price that data or at least to gain value from that data, that's where that sovereign value would come from. But it has to come from us understanding what that value is. I mean, 400 billion is just, to be honest with you, it's a tip of the iceberg right now.
Sure.
Yeah, that asset could be worth more than that if we really start to price it correctly and allow it to work for the citizens because it's their data, right?
Yeah. I'm seeing opportunity, I'm seeing jobs. But we're going to have to leave it there for now. I do wish we had more time for this, but we're going to have to keep it there for now. Sam, thank you for coming in. Interesting conversation.
Thank
and
you.
That was Sam Tayengwa, Group Executive for Global Markets over matters. Let's go to a short break. When we return, we take a look at the new episode, fresh episode that is from the Africa Side Hustle with Prudence Makubalo. Stay watching.